Ohio Organizing Collaborative. Very excited for her to present to us tonight. She's got something she's going to share with us, some interactive work that we're going to do. And as the agenda shows, we've got some business that we're going to talk about, upcoming actions, what happened last Tuesday, next steps on our Richland County ban, fracking waste ban, but also moving into Crawford County and start the discussion for Ashland and Holmes County. So without further ado, are you plugged in and ready to go?
Yep, my jump right there.
Okay. And Caitlin Johnson.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
So would you like me to shut off the setup lights here?
Can you all see okay?
Okay.
So, let's see, where is that from? Okay. So bear with me, this is really my first time doing this training. I've been through it. First of all, did everybody get a copy of the PowerPoint and a worksheet? No. They're on the back table.
Okay.
Second of all, before I start, I will pass this around if I could have it back when you guys are done. This is a strategy report. Ohio Organizing Collaborative is a statewide organization. We have 14 different members. We have a variety of campaigns. And our long-term goal really is to build a broad-based progressive coalition, or not coalition, movement in Ohio. And that's part of why we tackle all sorts of different issues, because we really see it as part of one big fight. We have offices in Cincinnati, in Columbus, in Youngstown, in Warren, Akron, Canton, Cleveland, now Toledo, Dayton. We work on everything from oil and gas drilling. We have a health equity campaign. We have a mass incarceration campaign. Right now, one of our big focuses is anti-stand your ground work. That's not my work, but that's another piece of work people are working on. In Youngstown, it's a big vacant property campaign. So as you can see, we're really kind of touching a lot of different issues. But like I said, we see it as part of one big fight. So I'll pass this around. So if you're not familiar with us, you can just flip through that and see a little bit about it. Now, I work specifically for Campaign on Oil and Gas Drilling. Our campaign is called Communities United for Responsible Energy. We do not, I have a brochure in the back, and that I'll tell you a little bit about that brochure later. It's not the main brochure. I'll explain why. But our Communities United for Responsible Energy has really 4 principles, and that would be democracy, disclosure, fairness, and future. And to just go over that really quick, democracy is the idea that people should have a right to say what happens in their communities and on their land. And that ties into issues with local government, local control, that ties into unitization issues, that ties into the discrepancy in that oil and gas companies are able to appeal a permit that is denied, that citizens are not able to appeal a permit that is granted, all sorts of democracy issues there. Disclosure, of course, relates to things like the medical gag orders, violations, Ohio's violations of Emergency Planning Community Right to Know Act, which is a federal act about disclosing chemical contents to first responders. Also, we have an issue with our non-existent real tracking system in Ohio, about figuring out where waste is going. Let's see, fairness. The idea of fairness pertains to fully calculating the costs and benefits, if there are any, of this shale boom. You know, we hear a lot of talk about jobs, but when you go to any of these drilling sites, it's all Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, whatever, out-of-state places. And I've heard from oil and gas industry executives themselves that Ohioans can't be hired because of we all can't pass drug tests. I guess they don't do drugs in Texas, so. And the final one is future, and that is the principle saying that we believe that Ohio's future does not lie in the fossil fuel industry. It lies in moving towards renewables, green, clean energy, and one of the things that's under attack now is Ohio's, you know, it's not that robust, really, a pretty modest renewable portfolio standard, which says, I think it's 12.5% of Ohio's energy by 2025, don't quote me on that, has to come from renewables. And because of this big natural gas boom that we're having in the state, certain members of the General Assembly and the State Senate say, we don't need that. So, but I'm not really talking about our campaign today. I just wanted to give you guys an overview. I'm talking about building your own public narrative if you all plan to be leaders and activists in this work. And this is training we give to all people that work in our campaigns. And like I said, I'm going to do my best. But I guess I'll start off about telling you a little bit about why I do this work. Because it doesn't, if you just think about it on its face, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Because I live in Cleveland, which isn't a heavily fracked place. But this is really where I see, like, this is my home. That's County Mayo in Ireland. And that's the highest point. That's Croagh Patrick. And when my grandmother was a little girl, she used to climb up that on her hands and knees during the festival of Lunasa, which used to be a pagan festival that somehow became a Catholic festival, to show your devotion to God. So my grandmother grew up there. She was born in 1910. Her name was Anne Sweeney. Well, Anne Morin before she got married. And she's kind of like the best. I don't know. Maybe I idealize her, but I think she's a pretty amazing lady. Hey. Okay. So this isn't her, but this very well could be her. This is Ackle Island. That's a little island off the coast of County Mayo. That's actually where my grandfather's from, but she was from the mainland, County Mayo. Now, my grandmother, during that time, if any of you know about Irish history, Ireland was occupied. It was occupied by the British Army. And my grandma grew up very poor. Her mother died during the influenza epidemic. And she pretty much had to raise her family, raise her little brothers and sisters. And she didn't really talk much. She wasn't a complainer, She didn't talk about all the hardships that she faced. But a couple stories I did get from her. One was, just like this, she had a donkey, and she was coming home from the market. And as was a usual occurrence, the British soldiers would approach and go through all their stuff and take anything of value. And she was smart. She had some money, not much, and she rolled it up and stuck it in the donkey's ear. and was able to make it home. And another time, she was by herself. And she was working in their little chicken coop, and the British soldiers came again. And they smashed all the eggs, ruined all the eggs. And I think she was one of 6. So, and that was, what they needed for food. So she went, these stories of being occupied and being so economically and politically repressed were things that just kind of stuck with me ever since I was a little kid. But when she was 17, she got on a boat by herself. Well, she had one friend, came to Cleveland, where her Aunt Kitty lived, in East Cleveland, and worked as a maid in Shaker Heights. Then she eventually met that guy, my grandpa. He has a story too, but too long, I can't even get into that. And they got married, and they had 7 kids, and they grew up they lived on West 93rd Street in Cleveland. And let's see, and this is us today. Well, 20 years ago. There's a lot more of us now. That's me. I was 8. Not 20 years ago, 24 years ago. Yeah. If you can imagine all these people now, how many there would be. I counted last night, over 50. And I have uncles that are judges, uncles that are doctors and professors, and my mom was a history teacher. And my grandparents always talked about the importance of education. And there was always this idea in my family that my grandparents left economic and political oppression and came to Ohio for freedom and opportunity. And that made me feel really good about being an American. But then as I got older and I started learning more, some of my political views were changing. And my most recent job before I had this organizing job, I was working at a foundation. And they came to me and said, Caitlin, we need to understand what's going to happen with fracking because it's going to become a big thing in Ohio. We need somebody to really look into it. So can you be our point person on that? I said, sure. And so when I first started working on fracking, it was really more of an intellectual exercise. I really understood that I didn't think things were good. I didn't think the way things were happening were making a whole lot of sense. I had a lot of problems with the issues of democracy, about big money, being able to get politicians to do what they want simply because they have the money. But it wasn't until I attended a meeting early on in this job, so about 4 months ago, in Portage County, where the residents of Portage County just simply wanted to find out from ODNR, Ohio Department of Natural Resources, what's going on with all these injection wells you have permitted here. That's all they wanted to know. And ODNR showed up with 15 armed guards.
Oh, you went
And
to that.
yes,
Oh,
and a dog.
yeah.
And I thought to myself, wait, like, it didn't register right away, but it was so deeply offensive to me. And I thought about why, and I think the reason why is because I know that my grandparents sacrificed so much and left the country that they loved to escape that sort of thing. And now that's happening in Ohio. So this is a picture, I don't have any pictures from Portage County because they wouldn't let us bring in cameras. Although the county commissioner made a stink about that and at the last minute got it overturned, but I didn't know that. The word didn't get out to me, so I didn't bring my camera. Should have anyway though. Guess I'm just too obedient. So this is just a picture, I feel like everywhere I go, every time I go to some fracking or oil and gas event, you see this show of force. And I've heard stories about a man out in Noble County who didn't want a landman coming to his land. And he told the guy to get off. The landman went to the sheriff, told the sheriff this guy pulled a gun on him, or threatened him with a gun. Which, I don't know about Ohio law, but I think castle doctrine, right? If you're defending your land, I thought that's legit in Ohio, I might not be right. But the sheriff comes and arrests this guy and throws him in jail for 2 days. So I'm hearing all these stories early on in my job, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like the place that my grandparents left, it's coming true here. So what was their sacrifice for? And then ironically, I just thought I'd throw this in at the end. In County Mayo, where my family is from, there is a huge protest about a pipeline. I just think that's funny. It comes full circle. So there you have it. That is my public narrative about why I do this work. And I don't know, have any of you guys had any sort of training about this before? Just gone over this with you? So why do you think that telling stories is effective in this kind of work?
Personalizes it.
It's emotional.
Emotional, yeah. What kind of emotions did you feel when I was talking about my grandparents?
You made it very, like you said, you made it personal, like everyone can kind of feel like they were in the setting and they could understand that things aren't really that different. And when we learn about things like this over the years in history, you don't really expect it to happen here. And when you compare the two, it's kind of like, it's very in your face. And it does make you emotional because you felt emotions for the people that went through it in the past. And you're realizing that's kind of what's happening now.
Anybody else?
Well, it's all those sacrifices people made in the past and now having to reinvent it all. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a waste of energy to have to go through this over and over and over again.
Yeah, so what do we have to do then? If, that story,
Reach out, connect.
it's supposed to try to give you a sense of, make you want to act in the face of uncertainty. That's why we tell stories, to make it feel like there's really something at stake here. But they teach us in organizing, right? They teach us that there are two reasons why we do anything. Or two ways of doing anything. So there's the how, which is the strategy, the tactical, going to the State House and lobbying and figuring out what bill could get passed or whatever. That's that's very tactical. That's like brain work. The why is your heart. Like any successful movement really needs to have both. So you can have somebody, and I see this sometimes in some of the fracking work actually. I see people who kind of do it on their own, go on their own, they have some idea about an ordinance they want their city to pass